Hello and welcome to another video. My name is Ben and I'm a self-taught web developer who went from zero to paid full stack developer in under 8 months. And today I want to talk about a question I got from a subscriber that is, what do I do when I get stuck? And I think that this is a really common question for absolutely everybody who starts to learn web development and everybody who is going through the Odin Project. Getting stuck is just a given. Web development is very challenging. There's a lot of new concepts. It's quite foreign to the average person. It's a different way of thinking. And the complex problems that you are faced with are pretty tough. So it makes sense that you will get stuck from time to time. And I was thinking about this question and how to answer it. And really reflecting on my own experiences, I think there are two key areas where you tend to get stuck. The first is when you're trying to think about how to even approach a problem before you even start building. Okay, it's figuring out what it is that you need to build in order to solve the problem. Okay, that's the first place you get stuck. And then the second place you get stuck is actually during the coding, during the feature building, which I think that there are some pretty good tools and techniques that you can use for debugging there to help you get through. So going back to the first issue where you're before a feature build, you finished reading your lesson content, you get to the end, the assignment, and you get given some acceptance criteria of what you need to build, okay? Whether it is tic-tac-toe or you're building my events project in Ruby on Rails. There's a whole range of projects that you'll get exposed to. And each time you're gonna have to sit down and think about, okay, how am I going to build this thing? And that is tough, especially when you're in the foundations or you're using a new tech stack. It gets a little bit easier as you go through the curriculum because you've sort of seen this before, you've developed a pattern, and you kind of know, okay, I have a process down, this is how I'm going to approach this problem. But when you do start to sit down, I think that the foundations of the Odin Project, where it talks about thinking about a problem solving, breaking it down into smaller components, using pseudocode, focusing on what the inputs and the outputs that you require are, and really just starting simple. These are really important things to embrace before you jump into any kind of project and start thinking about it. Just focus on the simple things and break it down, okay? That is the fundamental thing. Every developer does this, from someone who's brand new to someone who's been doing it for 10 years. Everybody has to start with thinking about the problem first, picking up a piece of paper and a pen or a pencil and just writing things down, building a mental map of what exactly it is that you need. Okay, and once you have this mental map together on paper, now you have a starting point. Okay, and then you can start thinking about writing your code, what code you need to begin with, starting from a foundation and building up. And the way I see it is, you don't have to get this step perfect. Okay, I think do the best job that you can on paper. Thinking about, again, using pseudocode, the inputs, the outputs, what the acceptance criteria are, how you're going to go from a blank screen to that final product. And then breaking that down into, okay, I don't need the final product. What is the final product made up of? What are the components? Okay, let me start on this component at the base, okay? And then let's build that. Now I need this next component that's going to interact with that. Let's build that. And you just build on top of things. But if it's not perfect, that's absolutely okay. The important thing is that you have a starting point in your mind. And if it is wrong, you can go back and refactor. But usually what happens is when you start to code, you start to realize, oh, my scratch pad, pen and paper was actually incorrect. You can go back and then refactor on your pen and paper, okay? And then go back to your code. And you just carry on that way and you refactor things as necessary. That's how I've always approached things, but always start breaking down the problem first. I think that's so important. If you just go straight to code, chances are as the projects get more complex, you're going to get stuck, or you're going to go down rabbit holes or avenues that are going to be counterproductive, inefficient, and lead to burning that wick in your mind of how much tolerance you have for spending at your computer at that moment in time. So that's thinking about before the build. And then while you're building, oftentimes you will get stuck again. You might need to do something that you're unsure about. you might have like a bug or something that you don't know how to fix. So I think, speaking of bugs specifically, whether it's front end or back end, you really need to learn how to use a debugger and the console. So if you're working in the front end, understanding how to use a debugger, okay, in the browser. There are great videos on YouTube that help break down debugging front end code in the browser. So you're going to be using breakpoints, skipping through to the next breakpoints. Finding your code within the browser is the way I would recommend doing it. So you go to Chrome or Firefox developer tools, and you find the line of code, you copy that, paste it into your browser in the search, and you can find that code within your browser, and then you can just play with it there to figure out what exactly is going wrong. The other way you can do it is using console log statements within your code, in your editor, for example, and then running that in the browser to see what's being outputted as well to test your assumptions. That's the front end. I highly recommend looking at some videos on that. Just YouTube debugging JavaScript in the browser. I'm not even going to bother giving you specifics because there's just so much good content out there already. The next thing is backend. If you're doing any backend work, again, depending on the language and the framework that you're using, it's probably going to be language based more than anything. Learn how to use the debugger, and that's going to be probably entering a debugger statement within your code, and then when it gets hit, you go into your console, you can step through things, you can call elements, you can call methods just to test your assumptions again. Another issue that you might come across are errors. We're all going to come across errors. It's not a if, it's a when. It happens every day. Okay, so the key thing here is to read the error carefully. Understand how to read errors. Okay, and it does get covered in the foundations of the Odin Project. But I think many developers just see an error and then jump to next steps or conclusions too early. Read that error, find the line it is on, look at the call stack and see, okay, what was called before it, what was called up to that point, and then read the error itself. You'll have a good understanding of what the error is then before you jump into it. If you still can't figure things out, use Google, use ChatGPT. These errors have all been come across by many people. Chances are you'll figure out a way through it. One of the things that I've said multiple times here is testing your assumptions. So whether you're using front-end or back-end debuggers, the way I like to solve a problem is I go to a point in my code where the error is based on the error that's given to me, or I may go to a point in my code just before that, just to test my assumptions. So what I want to do is hit a breakpoint, and then once I'm in that breakpoint, I will say, okay, I expect this variable to have this value. And if it does, okay, great, my assumption is correct. And now you go to the next variable, for example, and you say, okay, I expect it to this value. And you may have to step through your code a bit here. And you'll find a point where a variable or a method or function does not have the output or value that you're expecting. And then you can say, oh, okay, why is that? You can then go to that method, for example, and see what's going on here. And you might have put a breakpoint within there to see, oh, is this receiving a different value than I'm expecting? And you can go through stepwise, but always just start where you know and then go through, and you'll eventually find where the issue is, okay? That's really high-level tips for debugging both front-end and back-end. Another really good, helpful tip for when you are stuck is don't beat yourself up over it. You will eventually find a solution or a way forward. But oftentimes if you sit there and you start to feel, I don't know, tight in your stomach or clenched jaw or something like that, you're getting a bit frustrated, with this whole thing, just step away, take a break, go for a walk for 10 minutes. Or watch my Coders Break video where we review funny memes and just have a gab about coding. But just step away, it helps clear the mind, okay? Oftentimes developers will come up with solutions to problems when they're walking their dog, in the shower, laying in bed at night. It just gives you, there's a lot of value in just stepping away. And funnily enough, in the background in your mind, things are still worked on and thought about, and a solution will pop up. And the reason it pops up is because you're not in this kind of tense moment. you're doing some other activity where you're more relaxed and your brain is allowed to work more freely, and you will come up with a solution 9 times out of 10. At least that's how it works for me. And then finally, a question that was posed to me is, should I feel guilty for looking at other solutions before I've solved the problem? And I would say, in short, no, not at all. But it does depend on how you approach that. For example, for me going through the Odin Project, there were many times where I felt stuck because this was a whole new way of thinking and I just didn't quite understand. Maybe I was moving through the content a little too quickly and setting expectations a little high on myself. There were times where I just felt like I'm not sure how to do this. I don't know what to do. I start to feel a bit demotivated or stressed about it. And so what I would do is sometimes I would look at other people's solutions kind of like this. I would just start to see, okay, how did they at least structure their file? Or how would they at least structure their code to do this one piece that I'm stuck on? And I wouldn't take it verbatim. I would never copy and paste anyone's code, never copy and paste anybody's code. But I think it is okay to take a peek at a solution if you are really stuck and you've tried everything else. Because if you take a look at it and you understand how somebody is approaching it, that's just one way to approach it. There are going to be many different ways to approach it. But what it will do is it will unlock that door in your mind, and then the floodgates open, and your confidence and ideas will then start to flow. And you may then choose to implement it a very different way. But if you do look at solutions, I suggest all you do is look at it, read it, understand it, and then close it. And go back to your code and then figure out how to implement it in your own code there now with this new understanding. For me, this is called learning and is absolutely fine to do. I wouldn't do it at the beginning of every project every single time, but when you're really stuck, I think that's absolutely fine. The worst thing you can do is just copy paste code, throw it into your own, and then move on without really understanding what's going on. You're just cheating yourself and you will never learn that way. And I think it's a very poor approach to learning web development. Okay, I think that's covered everything that I want to talk about for when you get stuck, when you're studying and learning to code within the Odin project. What do you think of these tools and tips? Do you have any other approaches or techniques that you use when you get stuck? Do you look at solutions? Do you think it's okay to look at solutions? Maybe you disagree with me. I'd love to learn more about what you think in your approach to coding. Okay, thanks for watching. Please do like, subscribe, comment, all the rest of it. It is YouTube after all. I'd really appreciate that because it does help out the channel. And I will see you on the next one. Have a good one.